Hi.
How you doing?
Very good.
So I want to jump straight in. What's the most irritating misconception about you and the position that you're in?
You can start.
Oh, that is a good question. I guess probably the biggest misconception is that I may only be interested in certain things, or I may have an aptitude for certain genres of programme. And I think that's partly because I've come from different areas. So I started out in black newspapers, and then I moved into black music, and then I went and moved into consumer programmes, and then I worked on the Chelsea Flower Show, and I worked in Panorama. And each time I've done those sort of moves, people have been slightly surprised that I've gone in those different directions. And it's like I'm able to be interested in lots of different things.
And does the misconception come from talent or people who are giving you jobs, hiring you, as it were?
It's probably from the people that neither actually. It's from peers in the industry, I would say.
Okay.
It's like people are surprised if I've done a particular kind of show, which they just wouldn't necessarily have associated with.
So
Yeah, it's a similar thing. I think the key word in there was irritating, because when you intersect a few spaces, like being a female, being black, being seen as young, there is an assumption of what your capacity is for and what where your interests lie and things like that. And I think that comes from both sides. It comes from producers only bringing certain types of stories my way, and it comes from peers maybe pushing things towards me that they think I will have an aptitude for, when, you know, we as program makers and as program commissioners, we watch everything, we're aware of everything, so we have a capacity for everything. But I think the wider society tries to box in what comes your way, and it sort of leaves it down to you to kind of broaden and put the message out there that you want more and you're capable of looking after more.
So describe your role. What is your role title?
My title is commissioning editor for comedy at the BBC. I've been a commissioning editor for just under a year. I became a full-time commissioner last year, and before that I was digital content editor for the team. So the majority of the things that I looked after were programmes that ended up on the online space. So when BBC Three became a digital channel, a lot of the comedy that I looked after, developed and got to screen was on the BBC Three channel. So a lot of people think I'm the BBC Three commissioner, but I'm actually the genre commissioner, and to all intents and purposes look after programmes for all the channels. I don't have credits on all the channels, but that's my role, to look at content that's suitable for everything.
Okay. And
So my role is creative director at Woodcut Media. It's a TV production company. My role involves being responsible for editorial strategy, developing ideas, pitching ideas, executive producing ideas on a case-by-case basis, managing relationships with commissioners, distribution partners, on-screen talent and off-screen talent. And prior to that I was a commissioner at London Live, and that was primarily taking people from the digital space and trying to turn them into TV shows and TV stars, and that was sort of multi-genre, so a bit of drama, a bit of comedy, a bit of music, a bit of factory.
so how do people get their ideas to you? At what stage? And are you guys looking, or you're expecting people to come to you?
It's always a two-way street. I think the BBC email is one of the easiest to figure out in the world. And most people are supposed to come in via pitch, but they always start with an email. They always start with a, "Hi, I've got this brilliant thing for you," or "Hi, I thought this would be suitable for you," and then you have to redirect them to pitch. The reason that pitch is so important is because it's an online space that data stamps your idea. If two ideas come in that are similar and we pick one over the other, we can say when they came in, what merits, pushed one across the line and made one fail. So it's important for you and your IP and your proof that you go via pitch, but it's one of those things that the habit hasn't been formed yet, so people do initially come via email. And then myself, I do a lot of research. I carve out an hour a week to sit on YouTube, to go on Vimeo, to look at things that have been recommended to me. Colleagues around the building ping things my way, something they've found funny along the line. The thing with comedy is it's such a specific genre. It's not, it's one of those things that a lot of people try in the online space, but not everyone understands the editorial that will push it into a broadcaster space. So not everything funny has to leave the internet to come onto telly, and not everything funny is suitable for telly. So that's for me to sort of decipher. So I spend a lot of time going through a lot of different things and seeing, is there a way to make it televisual, and if there isn't, maybe YouTube or the internet is the best home for it, and if there is, then I get those people to come in and we talk about if they would like to be on TV, if they're willing to tweak the content to make it televisual, and take it from there.
So it's easier for you to look for, I suppose, than getting a deluge of stuff to you.
It runs both ways.
Okay.
I get more things coming my way than I find, and
Okay.
I do task producers with making sure that they've got their ear to the ground to who's really making moves in the comedy space, whether on stage, whether in theatre, whether online. There could be someone in drama who's really funny, there could be someone in factual who's really funny, so I just make sure producers, when they see someone funny and they know that I don't know them, to send their name or a clip or a link or something my way.
Yeah, like, I've got time for girls like her, you know what I mean? Because she's ambitious, she's got talent, and she's got a good head on her. Great head.
So you're attracted to intelligence?
Yeah, man, I think Rachel's beautiful because she's got good brains.
And then you it's different because the production company, so how do people find you? Do you come, or is it in-house, come up with your own ideas?
So I guess there's probably three different ways that ideas come about. One is internally. Someone in the team might come up with an idea, someone might spot, because I'm in factual, someone might spot an article or someone in an article, and that makes people think that there might be a reason to maybe gain access to someone, then you might flag that with the commissioner. Or if you're in a good position as a production company, you've got certain commissioners that might call you up and say, I'm looking for something in this space, can you have a think about this kind of thing? And we've been fortunate in that regard. And then the other ways that we come up with ideas is through partnerships. So the best example of that is a partnership that we have with a company called the Development Partnership, which is a management talent company, part of a broader company called the Artist Partnership. So they look after people like Idris Elba, Kim Cattrall, Anna Friel, Joseph Fiennes, and in the non-scripted space they pretty much exclusively develop factual ideas with us. And so for example, Robert, who works there, when he contacted me saying that he represents Joseph Fiennes, and Joseph Fiennes has always wanted to go on a journey with his cousin, so Ranulph Fiennes. What did I think? And I was like, well, that feels like the kind of thing we should maybe pitch to Nat Geo. So then Robert and I went to Nat Geo, said that we had this access, and then over a period of time we were fortunate that became like a 3-part series for National Geographic. So it happens in lots of different ways for us.
So there's a lot of genres, and do you call them genres or fields or departments? You've got factual, there's genres. So it's non-factual, factual, scripted, non-scripted, then you go into comedy. Can you explain some of those different?
I think different channels call things different things. Where I currently work is known as scripted comedy. So it's very much contrived characters in contrived worlds. It can be a version of someone, like Josh Willikin, the comic, wrote a sitcom called Josh, where it's sort of him in a flatmate situation trying to get the girl. Dane Baptiste called his Sunny D, and it's sort of semi-autobiographical, talking about having a twin and explaining to parents from a certain background that he wanted to work in the arts rather than be this accountant that they were hoping he'd be. So to all intents and purposes, it is about contrivance when you're talking to a scripted comedy team. Annoyingly, when you see things like stand-up shows, and when you see things like panel shows, and when you see things like comics being themselves in a thing, or a prank show, or someone with a hidden cam going out and doing stupid things to members of the public, that's called an entertainment show. That's all under the umbrella of entertainment. But then entertainment spans out to become shiny floor shows like a Strictly, or a reality show like a Love Island and things like that. So entertainment is quite a broad genre. So whenever you see comics as themselves on a panel, on a stage, with members of the public, that's entertainment. When you see them playing a character, even if it's a version of themselves, that's scripted comedy. So that's the defining line between what we do.
And then factual, can you have a factual comedy? A factual entertainment show?
So, you get lots of different variations. So, for example, in the world of factual entertainment, you have shows that you would call factual entertainment with a capital F, and factual entertainment with a capital E.
Oh my goodness.
And so the capital F means that there's more of a focus on maybe a constructed documentary element to it, and the E, if that's the highlight, means there's more of an entertainment construct to that. The other thing is that for different channels and different types of channels, they regard factual in different ways. So I would say, broadly speaking, terrestrial channels, and maybe include Sky as well, so BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 and Sky, they'll talk about documentaries, they will talk about specialist factual, which is basically the easiest way to think about specialist factual is any subjects that you would study at university and then you turn it into a TV programme. It's basically specialist factual, history, arts, archaeology, whatever it might be. And then you might get factual entertainment, which is now sometimes called popular factual. And then you've got features, which is more sort of lifestyle skewed programming as well. And that's broadly on the terrestrial channels. When you go to multi-channel, because some of those channels are very niche in terms of the subject matter, it becomes about the subject matter. So for crime and investigation, it's about crime programs. Or for Sky, who Sky picked, they might be interested in paranormal programs. So it's less about the genre, it's more about, is there a particular subject matter that resonates with our audience? So that's genres. If you're talking to broadcasters in the US, they don't talk about genres, they talk about buckets.
Oh my goodness.
And they put everything in buckets. And it might be a reality bucket. It might be a follow doc bucket, which is a little bit like observational documentary. They don't have factual television, they have non-scripted. And so you have to sort of get used to the lingo depending on who you're talking to.
I'm already tired.
It's
a lot. And then at this point, as someone who's come up with an idea, haven't decided what it's going to be, how does this person with an idea work it all out? What kind of research? Because creatives are creatives, right? So sometimes it's spur of the moment, it's spontaneous, but then getting bogged down with the research and trying to find where you fit in. How do they get it right? And because I can imagine it's annoying when you get the wrong thing and people don't necessarily, it feels like they haven't done their research.
Sure. I think, there's no formula, there's no one way to write a sitcom. Sure. It can come in lots of different forms. There are certain styles that people are familiar with, like mock doc, and where you break the fourth wall and you either have an inner monologue like a Peep Show, or you give your monologue to the screen like a Fleabag. So in terms of how you're going to stylize, that's completely up to the content maker. And in the scripted world, the only thing that we're looking for is it funny and has it got the legs to run? Some people don't realise that they close off their stories. They give you a beginning, middle and end in their pilot, and there's nowhere to go.
Okay.
You've reconciled the love interest, you've reconciled the argument with mum, you've reconciled the being fired from a job. Where are we going with this? So some people inadvertently do close off their story. And for sitcom, just breaking down those two words, situation comedy. What's funny about this situation? Who are the people in this situation that make it funny? You always have to be weighing the sit and the com and the sit and the con. That is the rhythm, that you should be aiming for. What's the relatable thing? Is this a person that's like you, so you think, oh God, he's living my life? Or is this a person who's screwing up, so you're like, thank God I don't live his life? What's the situation? Is it, oh, that's a familiar space? Cheers in a pub, Frasier in a radio station, Friends in a coffee shop, all of these kind of spaces, what's familiar about them? What's going to keep me tuning in week after week? The characters, those people that occupy that world. So just keeping a good grasp on what it is that you're trying to present, and is it suitable for that space? If it's a fact NT version of that, the fact bit is where you have something to learn or you take away something from it, but the sitcom, it can be as fantastical, contrived, silly, whatever you want it to be, as long as you're constantly reconciling the situation and the comedy. And a lot of people kind of lose sight of that. We were talking earlier about comedy drama and what makes one thing tip one way or another and things like that. And there are a few different ways in which a script can be tweaked or a story can be tweaked to serve one or the other really, really well. A lot of things can come in and just straddle right in the middle, and that's fine too. If it serves the story, we won't mess with things too much. But ultimately, in the scripted comedy world, that's all we're looking for. Good characters, the situation, and make it funny.
And based on the conversation we had prior to starting, I love the analogy you gave in regards to the storyline, that what makes something comedy and what makes something dramatic. Could you give a
absolutely. I think, we used to the drama team sit quite close to us, and we have increasingly started getting scripts that kind of straddle the two worlds. And I think a lot of our viewing has come from being taught by streaming services not to really adhere to either is it this, is it that. Some of the best comedies I watch on streaming services are dramas. I think The Good Wife's hilarious. I think The Good Fight's brilliant. Orange Is the New Black is hilarious. Even House of Cards gave you a good chuckle. So it's not worth getting too bogged down on that. But when a writer comes in and they're sort of, I want this to have the beating heart of a drama, but I can see where it's quite funny and I don't know which way to turn, and 5 gags this way and it's comedy and 3 more tragedies that way, it could be drama. But the example that I gave to you is, say for example there are 2 sisters walking across the field to a funeral. One of them trips up, her heel breaks, the other one berates her for buying yet another pair of Primark shoes when she sent her £100 to get an outfit for this funeral, and she cheaped out and went to Primark yet again and started going on about how M&S shoes are the best shoes ever. And then the sister tells her, oh my God, you're just like mum right now, bigging up M&S, who gives a flying shit. And all of this kind of thing. That makes it a comedy. That moment, even though they're on their way to a funeral, there's that bedrock of there being a sad moment. But in that moment, those 2 sisters, that squabbling, that's the relatable bit. That cussing her for being cheap, cussing her for getting high street shoes, telling her this other shop is quality, oh God, you sound like mum. That's what makes it funny. Those 2 sisters walking across the field on their way to a funeral, again, one stops and says, actually, I'm not going, I can't do it. And the other one says, you cannot let me down again, you always do this. Mum told me you were going to do this, and she told me not to let you. And the other one's like, I just can't. And off she goes. They're both sisters, we haven't changed their character, we haven't changed where they're going, we haven't changed what their lives are, but one has tipped dramatically and one tipped comedically. And those are the little tweaks we can advise writers to try out if they're not sure which genre is it, what serves the storytelling better, how can I get the most out of these characters. Those are the kind of tricks and tweaks that we can help introduce to help your script tip one way or another.
I actually felt the trauma when you gave the alternative narrative. Yeah, I can't do this. So Darren, how do you advise someone in the factual space? Like, how does that work?
So I think, partly from my experience of being pitch stuff as well, I think it's really important to understand that once you pitch something to a commissioner, that commissioner then has to pitch it to various people internally. And people may not believe this, but I genuinely believe it's harder for a commissioner to pitch internally than it is for you to pitch to a commissioner, because you're just pitching to one person. They're going to pitch to their bosses, to marketing, all the different stakeholders. There's lots of different people that are vying for attention and vying for that money, so it's tricky. So my thing is, you've always got to try and present a package that feels as complete as possible to get you to the quickest yes or no as possible, and then move on. And in order to do that, then you need to think, is the idea strong enough? Are we the right company to be pitching this kind of idea? And if we haven't pitched this kind of idea before, who do we need to be engaging with and attaching to projects, and that's on screen and off screen, to make people think, oh okay, well this is something that we should be doing. So we are having a conversation at the moment with a channel, and it's not a channel that we've done stuff with before, and it's adjacent to a subject matter that the company might be known for doing, and we have deliberately engaged a particular kind of off-screen talent to help shape the idea that is on their radar and is someone that they can begin to get their head around. So I'm going to borrow something from someone else said to me, and it was actually an American who was observing how the industry works over here, and he said that people don't commission programs over here, they commission people.
Okay.
That's so true.
In this country.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get on to the whole state of play in America. Reggie H recently had his documentary, the Black TV Renaissance, that's happening in America. We're getting a lot more diverse stories, and it seems like they're also investing in people that tell diverse stories or broader narratives.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening over here?
Just to go back to your point about the chain of, I call it the chain of enthusiasm,
Okay.
because the production company comes in and has to get enough of your blood going that you're going to tell your boss about it in such a way that he's like, right, let's put it on the agenda for when we meet up with the channel. Then we all go into the channel with the same level of enthusiasm, the same level of can-do-ness about this project. And in that routine with the channel, there's a scheduler, there's a finance person, there are all these people. They're not gatekeepers, they're not there to say no, they're there to get you to prove why. You know, why this, why now? That's what they're really there for. So you go in armed with that information, you go in armed with your understanding of that show, you go in armed with the continued enthusiasm. So like you said, you in the meeting only have to tell the commissioner about it and you're out. The commissioner has to tell a committee about it and get them all on board and ready to release the money and put some space in a schedule for it. You know, so it's a much bigger ask. So you bringing your A game to that meeting, you bringing a good bit of research, something that arms me so that I'm ready for the questions. That's a brilliant thing. And you saying that it's a package, it absolutely is a package. We get a lot of, you know, we go into meetings with people that we affectionately call time bandits who haven't really thought about the package. So it's a nice idea and it's got someone cool that sort of kind of wants to be in it. And I can't say that to a scheduling person, a money person, a legal person. You've got to give me more solid foundation to go into those meetings with. So yeah, so you were right, totally.
So is that the problem in regards to what gets made in America to what gets made over here?
The system's completely different over there. You know, we, in the sitcom space, 6 eps per season. In America, you can start at 10 and go all the way to 24. They have things like writers' rooms. You have a table full of people from different walks of life, different headspaces, a ton of Harvard people, just clever bods in a room, figuring it out, drawing from all of their mums, dads, aunties, neighbours, all of their experiences. We often have authored programs, so it's one writer or two in a writing team. So the setup is completely different. The funding is completely different. You know, a lot of broadcasters over there, they get the majority of their money through ad revenue. They do things like upfronts where they get, not only do they show you upfront, but they also get the money upfront at those events where they wheel out the entire cast. You'll have Viola at a table with a bunch of ad folk and they're all so starry-eyed that they're like, let's write this check when we leave here. And that's how that works. Whereas with, you know, working for a non-commercial broadcaster, I mean, I've worked at ITV, Channel 4, Fox International, so I do understand the commercial side, the ones that do have ad revenue coming in. But working for the BBC, which doesn't run adverts and it's publicly funded, we have to put on screen things that we can justify spending the money on. So the setup is completely different. So the comparison is also unfair. The percentage of who they serve audience-wise is different to here as well, and how the spending power of, you know, all of these weird buckets that they apportion to funding, the pink pound, the brown pound, the Latino pound, all of those kinds of things. We don't have those breakdowns here, so we can't be as targeted. We have to be a little bit broader, a little bit more, let's sweep everyone else up. Let's try and get everyone on board with this show, rather than let's just, you know, target them over there and that group over there. So the entire setup is different.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can have, I think it might be easier to just have a purely great idea and get it away in America, I think. But in order to get in the room, the process is different.
Yeah.
So most people are getting in via an affiliation with an agent. And most agents have some deal with the channels. At the point of signature, there is a packaging fee, and that goes direct to the agent, and then there's all the stuff that's below the line that comes to the producer. If you haven't made stuff in the US before, then you may be required to partner up with a production company over there. May not, but you might be. The other thing is that as a producer, the chances of you retaining your rights to your IP when you pitch in America, it diminishes exponentially. However, the budgets are bigger, so you have to make a call strategically whether am I going to get a nice production fee on a budget that's maybe twice what I might get in the UK, but that's the only money that I'm going to see. Or I try and get a show away here or in any other territory where I can retain the rights and then pitch the format into the States.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'll give you an example of a factual show. Jo Frost did Nanny Joe on tour, and she did it in Holland first. She then, once it was successful, she then pitched it into America. They did an American version, and then that American version was sold to the UK and went out on Quest Red over here. That does really well, creates a big halo effect, and then other people are interested in working with her in a different way.
That's the model.
Yeah.
And, you know, could she have gone directly? Maybe.
Mhm.
To the US? Could she have started in the UK? Maybe. I think there are different seasons to what is in vogue. I think you go through kind of phases where it feels like America's buying everything British and all of our best stars are going over there and everyone's getting swept up and things like that. But then you go through a season where it's sort of Scandinavian drama is the hot thing, Australian comedy might be the hot thing, then back to British comedy is the hot thing. So sometimes you can kind of ride the coattails of those trends, but I think ultimately it's really unfair to compare the numbers and the accolade and the casting power and the all of that kind of thing. It's just a much bigger, well-oiled machine that they have over there. You know, look at somebody who I find really inspirational, like Issa Rae, who started off literally with a mobile phone making a thing for YouTube, sick and tired of seeing all these sassy black women who know how to clap back and know their shit and, you know, no one can ever test them and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I'm not that chick. I'm very, very awkward. I never think of the right thing to say, which is why I run to the toilets and have a rap battle with myself out of earshot, because I ain't got it. In the moment, I ain't got it. And she never saw that version of a black person reflected, you know, so she decided to start her own. And US TV, we've had Girlfriends, we've had The Different World, we've had so many, Whitley, you know, we've had so many examples of strong female black characters, but yet still she identified a massive gap of a type of black female character that hadn't been. You would have thought that American TV would be biting its arm off for that. It was a long, hard slog for her to get that recognised and to anyone to take a chance. And it was only until ABC and Shondaland had a look at it, then everyone else wanted to have a look at it. That deal fell away for whatever reason, and then HBO came along. And then when you look at, I follow them on Instagram and I see what that writer's room looks like and what that process looks like. That is beautifully funded, you know, and we just don't have those types of budgets. We can't justify spending money on 10 heads around the table when one person came with the idea.
And
So
also I would say that the UK is more likely to take risks with talent. So there's a company called Renowned, run by Dwayne and Max, and they have a series that's going to go out on BET called Cop Watchers. But if you trace Dwayne and Renowned's history, they got their first commission when I was at London Live. Off the back of that, they then got investment from Channel 4's Growth Fund.
that's right.
They then had, and these aren't the only things that they've done, but these are important moments in their career. They then do a doc called NYPD, New York's Biggest Gang, for BBC, and it's based on that access that they then formatted that and pitched that to BET. And so they wouldn't have been able to do all of those things without those various bits of the public service food chain over here, giving them the space to develop.
No symbolic level or no abstract level, I live in a prison. For any given reason, they can stop me, take away my freedom of movement.
There's been a quiet awakening happening. People aren't going to rest on just accepting injustice.
So where do you guys step in when like someone's got a nugget of an idea and it's there? They haven't got the package right, but there's something there. What's your job at that point? Because and you can feel you're kind of excited, they're excited, but you know it's not going to go over well with the bosses, as it were. How do you help?
Fortunately for the people I encounter, I still have my talent scouting hat on. I never really take it off. And I joined the BBC in 2015 as development coordinator, someone to go through every pitch that no one had time to go through and be that first line of content. So knocking back people whose ideas weren't quite there and inviting in people whose ideas were kind of nearly there. So I never dropped that element of my role, even having been promoted. So I don't mind having conversations with you for as long as it takes until we get that right.
Okay.
And I know that's a rare one, and not a lot of commissioners have got time for that. I think I'm in the fortunate position where there's an element of outreach written into my very job spec, because I find it's one of the things that drives me, working with emerging writers, working with new talent, giving them the space, having the creak of a door open. Don't come polished, don't come fully formed, don't come with a production company, come early doors. Let's make sure you're barking up the right tree to begin with. You could waste your time for 3 years preciously nurturing something that you didn't know has already been done. Whereas if you come and talk to me early doors, and with the kind of knowledge and the nerd brain that I have, I can tell you the 3 things it's similar to and the 2 things it's not that similar to, and that's what you should pursue about it. You know, so in terms of new people that haven't quite figured it out, don't quite know if they've hit gold yet, I think having had years in the industry, you can kind of smell when there's something under the surface and it's worth carrying on the conversation.
So I can imagine that you guys get lots of, it's just like this, and you mentioned Insecure. I'm sure you've had loads of Insecure scripts, and I guess, is there a kind of like a copycat format in factual that people think that I'm going to do this and bring it to your attention? And
I'm going to have to answer this as diplomatically as I can.
okay.
So
in
the world of factual formats, you can change 1, maybe 2 elements of a program, and you essentially have a new show. Okay.
That's legal.
So
I went to that talk.
So take for example, Filthy Rich and Homeless, which was a BBC 3 series, and then they did a version of that was also on BBC 1. There's a show on Channel 5 which is about rich kids that are homeless. Okay? So the demographic of the people that are going through the process is different. So therefore, it's a different show. And the challenge that you have is that if something is successful, especially in the formatted space, then everyone, i.e. producers and commissioners at rival channels, would like something that feels like it could do a similar job for them. So I always say that when people say, you know, I want something really innovative, okay, they don't want you to turn the cup all the way around. What they really want you to do is just nudge it slightly.
Yeah.
It's just nudge it, so it's just pointing our direction slightly.
Yeah. We're not reinventing the wheel.
No. We're just gonna just polish the wheel a little bit and put a bit of varnish in it, different colour paint.
Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because like in the film space, what sells the idea is it's a bit Thelma and Louise meets Gremlins.
Yeah.
Whereas in the that sounds terrible, but in the TV space, you don't want to do what's been done before. That's kiss of death. If it feels like a Channel 4 show, it feels like a Channel 5 show, and you're talking to us at the Beeb, we won't touch it. If you say it was developed over there and you want to bring it here, we won't touch it, because for us it's all about origin. It's all about genesis. You thought of the Beeb when it was being written, or when you finished writing it and you looked at it, you thought this is very BBC. That's when we know you've had us in mind. If you're sort of, oh, this could go anywhere, then that probably isn't quite right for us. And absolutely, it's a bit like that guy's show and that girl's show over there. That's not going to be an appealing factor for us.
So is there an example of something that's come your way that you never ever want to receive again?
Oh gosh.
Like, yeah.
Right,
It's too many to name, I think.
I remember when I was at London Live and I got this treatment, and it was just like words on a page, like different colours, different sizes, no structure to it whatsoever, and you're trying to work out how they thought that was the right approach, and B, how on earth you can give feedback to something like that. So sometimes you do get things that, and that's why, and I would probably guess that that's someone that wasn't particularly experienced and that didn't necessarily know how to engage or how you expect to engage if you're on that side of the table. And I think if you are new in the industry, you're trying to work out how to pitch your idea, try and seek out someone that's got some experience. Whether that's a producer or a freelance person or a company, just someone that can give you a sense check as to what it is that you're putting through.
Is there anything?
My advice is do your Googles. How do I format a script? How do I put together a treatment? All of these words can be put in any search engine and will help you figure it out. Because, you know, I don't want to be a script snob and say, where's your interior day and your exterior night? That doesn't matter. Some people have sent things in prose. The one thing you can't do is what one person did, which was write in the voice of the character that they were trying to pitch. Handwritten, sent by post, with a headshot of them in a wig with a really painful looking choker. And that was their example of, this is what they would look like on screen. It's too much. You're just doing too much. You're shoving the idea down my throat. It's, you know, there is an etiquette in how you present something. Don't write reams and reams and reams, everything you've ever thought for the last 5 years, and now here it's coming at you. One page to tell us what it's about, a couple of samples to let us know what your writing style is, a couple of scenes to let us know what the world and those characters look like. That is really it. We're not asking you for too much, because at the end of the day, there is such a thing as a script commission. That script commission can then turn into a table read commission. That table read can then turn into a pilot, and then that pilot can turn into a series. So you just don't have to do too much.
But take us through the commission stage, and I guess, again, it will vary from factual to situational comedy.
Yes.
Because you mentioned table commission, script commission, commission. What are the stages?
The different stages of how we buy an idea from you is dependent on how fully formed it's come in. If you've got the seed of a good idea, a couple of great scenes, really great sounding characters, we want a full script. Some companies are big enough to absorb the time it will take you to sit down and write that script, and other companies are too small, or if it's just a one-man band, will give you a certain amount of money to concentrate, to carve out some time to concentrate on that script. We're going to pay you for your time to turn around the thing that we find promising in your idea. The next stage is a table read. That's where we put together a couple of grand with a production company. We ask you to go out and meet production companies. It's very tough for us to recommend who you go and work with, because if the chemistry doesn't work, it'll be, oi Sarah, that person you set me up with is a dud. So we suggest like-minded production companies. We even tell you, look at programs that you like, look at the credits, jot down those names of those people, and their contact details are all over the internet. You know, find a way to meet up with them and see if you like them. It's like, you know, choosing a plumber. They're all qualified, but whose personality do I like? Who am I going to spend 60 hours with? Who am I going to spend 3 months on a set with, ultimately, if we get there? So just pick someone who gets your idea, doesn't want to change it too much, doesn't want to inject too much so you feel a bit icky about the deal or whatever, that you just feel like, oh, you get me. You're gonna turn this around nice for me. Figure that out, and then we ask you to think of a cast. Who would you ideally like to play it? For the money that we're giving you, get some actors who you can book for that budget, and we'll get them around a table, and then we, the commissioning team, maybe the channel that we have in mind, will invite a couple of people from there, and that's what we call a table read, where the script is given an airing for the first time. We hear it out loud, so it's no longer in my head and how I imagine it and how my boss imagines it. We now see it coming to life with these characters, and hopefully who you've cast is who's going to end up on screen with it. And then the next thing is a pilot. If we love that table read, let's turn a camera on it, let's get a location going, let's get some costumes, and let's see it real. You know, and that's a pilot. And if that pilot does well, that's when it comes down to audience judgment, that comes down to critical acclaim, how it's received. Then we know if we've got a series on our hands. You know, sometimes things come in so brilliantly, it goes straight to series, because you can just tell this is going to be hilarious. Like something like Fleabag, you're not really needing to test it out, or who's going to be the cast, how's it all going to work. You just know that you've got really good writing, really strong characters on your hands, and you can move very quickly through that process. So those are the different stages.
So it varies, and I would say particularly in the case of the company I'm at, Woodcut, it varies because of how have our programs funded.
Okay.
So some of our programs are funded by broadcasters. Some of them have money from distributors. Some of them have money from private equity, private equity. Some of them have money from, broadly speaking, content finance companies that associate with brands. So that could be people like the Motion Content Group or Crumplewood. So that would define how you develop different types of ideas. So I'll just take an example of a process. So with the Fine series that we did, it started with a conversation, and depending on your relationship with a commissioner, you can afford to literally go in and just talk around a broad area. So we talked about a broad area, talked about doing something with Joseph and Savannah Fines, and they were like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Go away and think of something. We thought of one thing and pitched it back to them, and they said, that's not going to work for us because if they do that type of adventure, we know that that's not really going to rate. So go away and think of something else. Then we went away and thought of something else, and we thought about doing something in and around Egypt, because Robert had worked out or realised that there was a 50th anniversary of an expedition that Ssebandeke had done. So we went back to them and said, what about this, doing it around the Nile? They said, yeah, that sounds interesting, write something up. We then wrote up, it was about 3 pages, and then I remember the commissioner saying, this is interesting, but this is not, going back to your point, this is not enough for me to be able to take to my boss. We then brought in a specialist development producer who had a track record of developing these types of ideas. 2 weeks later, he presents us with a 25-page treatment that is a breakdown of what's going to happen across all 3 episodes, where they're going to go, what type of activities are going to go. We then give that to the commissioner. She then shares that with her boss. He then shares it with the team in America. The team in America go, well, this is interesting, but we haven't seen Joe and Ran on screen together before, so we need to work out what their chemistry is going to be like. Here is some money for some paid development for a chemistry sizzle. And we know that the bar at Nat Geo is very high for talent-led stuff. So we got a director who had filmed with David Attenborough and Brian Cox. The director of photography had just come off one of Nat Geo's most expensive factual shows, One Strange Rock. We shot it at Savannah Fine's home in Exmoor. It was the first time that he and Joe had seen each other face to face for 17 years. We shot it like it was the first day of principal photography in a documentary, and then we presented that back to them. And then it took a few months for it to get officially greenlit, but that product was the thing that put it over the line. And there are scenes from that sizzle that made it into the pre-titles of Ep 1 and into part 2 of Ep 1 as well. And so that's the standard that you're always, like, at whatever stage, you're constantly having to raise the bar in terms of what it is that you're going to deliver.
So if you're not a Fines,
Yeah.
what is...
Okay, so then the other way that we might do things is if it's something that we are co-financing with a distributor, then you've got straight commissions, right? Where you go to a broadcaster and they give you all the money. And then there are other types of programs where people acquire them after they've been made, which is an acquisition, right? And then you've got a show that's somewhere in between, which is what we would call a pre-sale or pre-buy, where a broadcaster might pre-buy a show that hasn't been made yet, but they kind of know what type of show it's going to be, and they'll put a portion of the budget in. And those types of shows tend to get made with a network of channels from around the world. So we do, so say for example, a history show. We might speak to History in the UK or Quest in the UK. And experience now tells us that if they're interested, then there's a chance that Smithsonian in America might be interested, that SBS in Australia might be interested, that RMC Découvert in France might be interested, Discovery Nordics might be interested as well, and you might have someone like Welt or someone in Germany that might be interested as well. So if you get one of those channels to come on board, and then you speak to a distributor, they'll look at it and go, yeah, we reckon we could probably find the other people to package this up. Now with a project like that, yes, you need a treatment, and you probably need a concept sizzle. And a concept sizzle doesn't cost you very much, because you can rip all of the images from YouTube, and what you're basically outlining is what the format of the show is. But if you're doing something on World War II, World War II has already happened, right? And so the research is already there. So if you want to do something that has a particular take, so we did a show called Combat Machines, then if you're telling the story of machines that were used in combat, like the script can write itself. The angle might need tweaking, but the script can write itself and the picture can write itself. So it's a relatively cost-effective way of developing. It's not necessarily any quicker than going through a traditional commissioner route, but it's another way. And so, for example, there's a show that we did, or that we're still doing actually for Sky, and it's called World's Most Evil Killers. And it's now in a series 4, and each series is about 20 episodes long. And the first series we got away because Sky had acquired one of our other crime series, and they wanted something similar, but they could only offer us a pre-sale budget or pre-sale contribution. We spoke to our distributor Kishette. Kishette said, well, if they can put in a third, we can put in a third, and we'll find someone else to try and put in the other third. And for the series 1, they found RTL in Germany, and RTL put in the other third. Now, fast forward to series 4, all 4 of those series have been sold to reels in America. Series 4 was sold to reels in America before we'd started making series 4, because they know the format of the show, and they know what it is they're going to get. So if as a distributor you've already sold a 20-part series to America before it's been made in the UK, then of course you can afford to fund it, because you know what it is that you're working with. So it doesn't have to be like a moonshot, like find the biggest talent in the world. There are lots of different ways to get stuff done, and that's just broadly like multi-channel factual and high-end specialist factual. I mean, there's lots of things in between.
So let's talk about the weight of expectation and being black people in your positions, managing talent, especially people of colour, who come to you with expecting, you know, you're black, I'm black, I've got my story, you know there's not enough representation, sort me out, get me on screen. That weight of expectation, how do you manage that for yourselves? Because also you will probably have a bit of a campaign yourself. It's a no-brainer. But also managing the talent and making them understand the reality of what it is. Because you've already actually broken it down for us that it's not as simple as yes or no.
No,
however,
yeah, I think I don't really wear the weight of who I am and what I'm doing too heavily on my sleeve. I think, you know, it's somebody told me at a panel that, you know, it's like, I do believe you may be the only black commissioner in BBC comedy history. I was like, probably. 2019 and there's still a lot of firsts. You know, it is what it is, but I don't wear that as the, hey, come and talk to me, I've cracked the gate open. And at the same time, I probably am more receptive for those that are really trying and want to figure it out and ask the right questions and things like that. I think, you know, talking to a lot of YouTubers, talking to a lot of people that just go out and make their own thing, they've realised that, you know what, I'm not going to wait for a broadcast, I'm not going to wait for permission, I'm going to go and make my thing. It's great and it's very encouraging, and, you know, the tip is, back in the day, the YouTubers were coming to us saying, do you want this, do you want this? And now we're sort of going out to them and saying, oh, I like that, come over here. So maybe my awareness of wanting all of those stories to get an airing is heightened because of who I am, but I don't think I'm obligated. Like, you know, we started off saying, not just because you're a woman doesn't mean you only want to tell women's stories, just because you're black doesn't mean you only tell black stories, but I certainly am aware of those two things because I am those two things, you know, so it is a balance constantly.
So I think it's the same for anyone that I encounter, which is that the attitude and aptitude has to be to a very high bar, because ultimately, if I'm going to help you, if I'm going to recommend you, then that's going to reflect on my reputation, right? So when I was a commissioner, there were absolutely people that were people of colour that were really talented that I was trying to help. But at the moment where the attitude and or aptitude fell, then I can't help you because you're not helping yourself, right? And that applies whether you're someone that's coming up and you're producing stuff or not. And if you have the right attitude and you have the right aptitude, I'll help you to the ends of the earth. There's a guy, he's going to get really embarrassed from saying this. There's a guy called Andrew Ether who came through an apprenticeship scheme at the BBC, and he was exactly the type of person that the BBC should be trying to hire and help. And he was on a scheme, and I said, look, I'll mentor you, and I helped him for that year. And I said, if you stick with this scheme, because he really wanted to work in BBC Children, I said, if you stick with this scheme for the whole year, I'll open up my contacts book to you and I'll introduce you to the creative director of Children, because then you've proven that you could stay the course. He stayed the course, I introduced him, he relocated to Manchester, he's been at the BBC for the last 7 years. So that's the thing, if you've got the right attitude and the aptitude, I'll help you and I'll back you, but you've got to prove that you've got some of that within yourself.
So you mentioned renowned. Is there anyone that from our community who you got it right and this is perfect?
There's a lot of people who are developing things with me now that I'm really, really impressed by. I think that you've spoken to a couple of writers that I'm in business with already. I've commissioned a script from Ajani from Dreaming While Black, and I commissioned a script from Atlanta, and I do believe she may be the only black female scripted writer in our history if her show goes to series. So this is what happens. You let someone like me in. The first thing I commissioned was the all Chinese, all female Chinese burn. That flopped, but that was still history making.
Yeah.
I looked after Hamza Arshad's series Coconut. I looked after so many developments of people that have come from the YouTube space, like first timers. You know, so for me, it's about putting my money where my mouth is. I say I want to engage with newbies, with emerging. You don't have to wait till you're Steve Coogan, Phoebe Waller-Bridge levels to get anywhere. And I really, really believe that. I like to give people chances. You know, broadcasters say that they're risk takers all the time. I take the wildest risks. One of my next commissions is going to be a series about talking cats. That's what Atlanta wrote, you know. So when I told my boss that, he was like, it sounds bonkers, but if you believe in it, let's go for it. And that's the trust that I've gained from, you know, who I worked with, but also the encouragement that I've given to emerging writers to just go for things, you know, to know that you can come and talk to a BBC about the wildest ideas. We'll make it work, we'll make it fit.
So quickly, what are you watching? And that let me ask actually, what are you watching that you can completely switch off and enjoy without putting your critical brain on it?
Love Island. I'm not ashamed.
You're proud of your
For the
Love Island.
record, Love Island.
For the record, Love Island. If you want me to switch up and enjoy life,
I've got a very weird brain because I used to be a compliance viewer at Channel 4. I can have 3 screens on a go and know exactly what's happening on all 3. So I have quite a few things on the go. I've been watching Stranger Things, I've been watching Chernobyl, and I have gone back to People Just Do Nothing because I missed the last series of it from the wedding onwards, and they're all an absolute joy. Chernobyl really impresses me because the geeky brain who loves history loves seeing that story told. The factual geeky brain in me knows that guy wrote The Hangover. So this boy is multi-talented. Like, he can move from a very commercial Boise bit of nonsense to a very well-paced, well-written, well-considered piece of factual drama storytelling. So I'm getting my life with all those 3 shows.
So what's on TV now, or what's been on in the past that you wish you'd commissioned?
for me, it has to be Last Chance You on Netflix. So what I love about Last Chance You is that it has almost sort of feature doc sensibilities in terms of sort of the epicness of the storytelling. It has really traditional format points, so every episode counts down 5 days, 4 days, 3 days to a game. And because it's junior college football, and unless you are really into that world, you've got no idea of knowing how the episode is going to end.
Okay.
And then the series is also a season arc. And then what they do is they know that most of the people have extraordinary backstories. And at key moments in any given episode, you'll get another backstory that will come out, which will mean that if someone is sitting on the just sitting on the bench, and you've got a locked off shot of this guy sitting on the bench, it carries so much more weight because you know what's going on. And that actually I think that came back from like a Vanity Fair article. It's in like season 4. But I remember watching the first season of that, and there's this really big defensive guy, he had a defensive position in there, and like I was crying in the last episode when he was getting his exam results, because I suddenly realised exactly what that would mean for him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I think it's a brilliant show. I would love to have made that show or commissioned. Yeah.
I think for me, I love short form. I love short series and web series, and one I came to quite late, but absolutely love is called High Maintenance, and it's about a weed courier in New York. And I think what's clever about it is he is just such a kind of dopey, really sweet, charming everyman, but it's not even about him. It's about all of his clients. Sometimes we start with the clients and their lives and their stresses and what's going on and why they need to call the guy. You're going to call the guy? Let's call the guy. And I love how that kind of introduces, he comes in of sort of 5-10 minutes later, after the series has, after the episode has started. And I think what's clever about it is just that turn of the door. We're all fascinated about big cities and how people live. New York, we're infinitely fascinated by because we've sort of watched New York stories our whole lives. But with every swing of a door, it's a new couple, it's a new life, it's a new world. It covers race, it covers sexuality. There's old people, there's young people, an old person trying weed for the first time, a young person having too much weed. It's just brilliant how much life and biography it captures, all within a very comedic space of this really unreliable, haphazard weed career. I love it.
Brilliant. So I've got stuff to watch. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So guys, this is the fun part. And it's the process. So we spoke to some writers earlier on. We gave them a theme to kind of create something out of. And I'm going to pitch to you in a very haphazard way their idea, what they came up with. And I just want you guys to say whether you commission it. It's not non-scripted, but you just have to expand your mind, Darren. And if you wouldn't script or you wouldn't commission it, what kind of notes would you give? Very quickly, this is very short. So this is it. It's called 26 Days. It's a comedy. It's a feature film. There's 4 characters. The theme of the narrative is legacy. The main character is a music artist who has been, sold his soul, become a bit of a commercialised phenomenon. However, his music partner has died, has come back to warn him that, look, in 26 days, if you don't make a tune that's memorable and improves your legacy, you're not going to make it. You're going to die a forgotten, lost soul, and your legacy is going to be tarnished. They have a child who hates the lead character because of embarrassment, bad relationship, and he's kind of got to prove himself to his child and redeem his legacy. And there's a villainous agent / manager who is trying to keep him on the money making path. Keep making that commercial music. You're not going to make anything authentic. Is this commissionable?
Well, it's a film, and I'm from TV, so that's my get out.
Would you say, hey, this could actually be a series?
If I read that as a Radio Times paragraph trying to entice me to watch, I'd need a couple more bits of jeopardy. Because I don't know you, so why do I care if you're commercial and raking in all the coins or not? And why do I care that that's an issue for you? It sounds very first world problems. He could take his money and go to counselling with his daughter and that's the end. So I think I'd have to have a few more elements of, if he doesn't do this, then this, and if he doesn't figure out that, then that, in the write-up for me to say, ooh, and then what happens? So at the moment it didn't hook me from that elevator pitch.
It began to sound a little bit, not completely like, but a little bit like the Idris Elba comedy that's on Netflix.
Oh, that Charlie thing.
Yeah,
Turn Up Charlie.
Or Turn Up Charlie, yeah.
Because it's someone that, had sort of, he was big and then he was going through a process and he was trying to rediscover himself and redefine himself. So, partially it sounded similar to something else that existed. For me personally, from a development point of view, way too complicated. There were too many layers. So I actually thought the idea was going to stop at the point at which the person who had died was coming back and speaking to them. Because if they had stopped it there, then I would think, cool, maybe you could pitch this as a 2020 version of A Christmas Carol.
Right.
And Scrooge is the DJ.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Ghost of Christmas Past, could be a manager, could be an agent, and then, he's trying to make a Christmas single, and then he makes a Christmas single that has something to say about it, because all these people have come into his life to steer it. So it had elements, it had the beginnings of something, but I think in terms of a pitch process, there were too many layers. And going back to your point about the Radio Times billing, that would have been long,
Long, yeah.
Partly because of my kind of summation. It's terrible.
No, but it's also the elements that were in the idea.
Yeah.
So the premise of someone that's, that feels like they might have sold out and they're trying to seek redemption. Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.